Everyone, we'll be starting by 2. Yeah, we'll be starting sharp at 2 for those who are wondering why we aren't speaking.
All right, I think I'll start off with general things. Uh, cool. Like, welcome to Kubernetes Bangalore. Although it's not in Bangalore and we are all remote, but yeah, the name as it is, so it stays, I guess. Like, yeah, this is a monthly meetup. We do it like regarding various Kubernetes topics, and this is like I think first time ever we are doing uh, a workshop for how to contribute. Like, yeah, we always played with the idea, but it never materialized. I guess it's happening now, and I see there is a lot of people are interested in how they can be part of this Kubernetes contribution journey. For today's workshop, we have here my co-organizer Prakash Mishra. Uh, so we both basically organize this meetup. Let me introduce myself as well. I'm Suraj Deshmukh. So those of you who don't know me, I work for a company called Kinfolk, and I was in Bangalore until last like 3 months ago. No, I'm not. But anyway, that's another discussion. So yeah, today we have with us Nabarun, who is an active contributor to Kubernetes, and he works for VMware, and he's released the lead for Kubernetes 1.21. And he helps with several other sub-projects in Kubernetes community, like enhancements, API machinery, Kubernetes clients, and he has he has been in various domains in this industry, like ranging from web services, data pipelines, and now infrastructure like Kubernetes. So yeah, and Nabarun is also like actively contributing and mentoring people in other various open source communities, including like Kubernetes. Now today, you see him here. The next speaker is Nikita. So I mean, there's no need of introduction, but yeah, anyway, let me do it for those of you who are new and don't know her. So she is also a senior member of technical staff at VMware and a member of Kubernetes steering committee at CNCF, and a CNCF ambassador. So she is a SIG lead for contributor experience, and so yeah, we'll see what SIGs are if you are confused about like what it means. Don't worry. And she helps run the GSOC and outreach internships for CNCF and Kubernetes. And the funny thing is like she came to this platform via GSOC and outreach. So yeah, a good way to contribute back, I guess. And our third speaker is Divya. She like along with helping here in the community, she also works as a senior systems engineer at HSBC, and she has been contributing to Kubernetes community for more than a year now. In various aspects of the community, you'll know like what all avenues there are now. After I give the mic to them, and she's the lead for SIG and another projects under CNCF umbrella like Litmus Chaos, and she's a CNCF ambassador as well. So outside of work commitments, she loves speaking about her adventures in cloud native space and tweeting cat photos. So yeah, I think I'll give over to them, and sure, take away.
Thanks, Suraj, for the elaborate introduction of us. It's a pleasure for us to be like giving this session to the Indian audience for the first time, and we hope that more of these in the near future and continue the train of thoughts. I'll just share my screen right now. Okay, here we go with the slides. So we're meeting today to know of some quirks and caveats of contributing to Kubernetes, and we hope that after 3 or so hours, you will get to know a lot about how to contribute to Kubernetes. With that, I'm going to welcome everyone on board to the ship. I hope that the waters will be calm for us to sail through. With that, let me give like a short overview of our experiences, and then later on open the floor for other contributors as well who are already in this call. So I'll go first. I started contributing due to basically the need for some patches into something that we were using in the product, specifically the Kubernetes Python client. I used to write a lot of Python back then, and found some patches that I want to do. Then it got me interested as to how I can help the project and help the community. Before that, I have been involved in some other open source projects, so I had an idea that in an open source community, there is always a need for help, and the community always helps you even grow, know things. After that, I started getting involved with other SIGs, specifically SIG release, being part of 4 previous release cycles, and this release cycle is my 5th one, which I'm leading. That's all. Been active in some other sub-projects, specifically API machinery and contributor experience. Having said that, I would pass the baton to Nikita. Nikita, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So hey everyone, I'm Nikita, and to talk about my experience, well, like Suraj mentioned, so there's this internship program called Google Summer of Code for students for open source projects, and Kubernetes was participating in that. And when I was a student, I really wanted to work on something that was not just writing like small tutorial, like following whatever there was in a tutorial or doing competitive programming, because I wanted my code to actually get used somewhere. And Kubernetes seemed very interesting. And also like I knew Go, so I thought this would be a really good place to contribute. I got started in this SIG, this area called API machinery, so mainly related to Kubernetes APIs. And if you've used Kubernetes before, so like I've worked on the design and implementation for validation for CRDs and things like scale, like the status and scale part of CRDs. From then on, I like after my internship ended, I realized I really like working in this community. I made lots of friends here from all over the world, and it gave me like a broader perspective on things, and I wanted to stick around. So I found other SIGs or other areas in Kubernetes that were also interesting and I wanted to look at. So I looked into like testing and contributor experience side of things. We'll talk a little bit more about what contributor experience is in a bit. So mainly around the GitHub automation side of things, the testing side of things, then dived a little bit into like release, like cross-cutting SIGs. And yeah, I've been doing that. Realized I want to do a little bit more for the community, stood for the steering committee election, luckily got selected, and that's another thing that I also do now for like the governance of the Kubernetes project. On day to day, I'm pretty lucky to like get paid to work on open source, so it makes all of this easier. And I also work with Nabarun, so Nabarun is also on my team. And yeah, we do cool things together in open source. Nabarun, introduce yourself.
So, hello everyone, I'm Divya, and thanks Nikita and Nabarun for like practically encapsulating most of my experiences. So I have sort of come into this community pretty late. I joined last year, and most of my experience is centered around documentation, communication, and contributor experience. So not as technical, but I joined this project with an aim to learn more about Kubernetes. And that's primarily because Kubernetes as a product was being adopted in my organization. So I figured that I could get a head start on things before starting to actually support stuff in my organization. And that sort of landed up that sort of ended up with me landing in the Kubernetes community. And since I did not really know where to start, and my basic skills were, my basic programming skills were not that great. So I ended up contributing to just the documentation bit. And from there, I think I saw a tweet, I guess, from Taylor or one of the release folks saying that there's this shadowing role that is opening up for 1.19 release, which started last year. So I applied for that, and then from there on, I've been part of 3 release cycles so far, and it's a lot of fun because we get to work with folks across the globe and learn newer perspectives. And honestly, because of my journey here, I have been sort of able to get interested in other disciplines as well, like chaos engineering and site reliability, which are closely tied to what I do at work. So that sort of helps me perform better at work, and being part of the community is definitely an experience that I sort of cherish on a day-to-day basis. And actually, release team meetings are my favorite time of the week because we get to catch up and hang out and talk about stuff. We do talk about stuff other than the release also. So that's something that we'll cover later on. So yeah, with that, I think I'd like to throw open the floor for any for any contributors that are there and who would like to share their experience within the community.
Should I say something? Or is everyone?
I'll now call out names. Suraj.
Sorry, what?
Prakash.
Suraj, go ahead.
All right. I'm not a very consistent contributor per se, so I might be a bad example for today. But the way I have been contributing consistently is through meetups. So one thing that you should take away today is in this space, it's not just about code or sending PRs. You can contribute in any way possible. So I think meetups has been my way of bringing people on board to this journey of Kubernetes, understanding this new technology and helping them in their careers. So yeah, that's and yeah, like on the code part, like once, like for example, the easiest thing I was contributing to was the website, the documentation website. So while doing my CK exam, I figured out there is no point in like buying certain like classes, like courses online or anything, like, because most of the things that the exam has is on the documentation. I was going through each and every tutorial, and then like since Kubernetes is like changing so fast, so there was always something that wasn't consistent with the current releases and all that. So I did a lot of contribution in the documentation. And with code wise, not much. Like early on, like when the Kubernetes minor release number was single digit, back then I used to do like bunch of like small things. But yeah, that's my more or less contribution journey to Kubernetes. So.
Yeah. So just like Suraj, right? So my journey has been similar. Not much, not code contribution, but mainly through meetups. One funny thing or one interesting thing is that the first time I heard the word Kubernetes was this meetup back in 2016. So Suraj was doing it and Red Hat office. That was I was in college, third year or something, when I first heard the word Kubernetes. And since then, whatever I've learned about Kubernetes and wherever Kubernetes has taken me in my career, that's all through these meetups. I met so many amazing folks from the community, had learned so much from them. So all of this has been made possible because of the amazing community here. And wherever I needed help at any point in time, it was just a question away. I could just hit up anyone and ask. People here are ready to answer. The one thing that you would observe is that everybody is ready to help each other, and that defines the Kubernetes community, right? So yeah, that's my short journey with Kubernetes. Nabarun?
Thank you, Suraj and Prakash, also for your insights. The floor is still open, but I would say, like, people, if they want to say about their experiences of starting to the community, if they have already started contributing, they can put in the Zoom chat as well, so that others can know what was your experience. But we will go ahead. And the first section will be covered by Divya. I'm going to delegate the screen share to her now.
Okay, thank you for that, Nabarun. I shall just start my screen share in a bit. Yeah. So I hope that are able to see my screen. Is it all good? And is the font size visible on everyone's screen?
Yes.
Yeah, so cool. So like we were speaking about our experiences, most of mine specifically have been shaped by the interaction with the community, specifically how warm and welcoming they were when I started out as a complete newbie. And I literally have actually sort of Googled how to Kubernetes when I started out. So I was that level of newbie, not even as proficient as most of you, but genuinely the community is extremely warm. And what I would sort of want everyone to take away from this is that we basically are a lot of people, and we're working towards bettering a particular technology. And more often than not, we are sort of not really we are not looking at the technology by itself. We are sort of a group of people at the end of the day. So that being said, what you should know about the community is that because it's such a vast ecosystem, it has to be sort of organized into subgroups, and the subgroups are special interest groups that work special interest groups that are commonly known as SIGs, then working groups, commonly known as WGs, and committees and user groups. Now, how do we identify specific groups to be a specific interest group or a working group or a committee or a user group is what I'm going to be taking you all through in the next couple of minutes. So before that, this is sort of accurate pictorial depiction of the ecosystem, and unfortunately, this was last updated in 2019. So I guess there's something that we should update soon. But this is an overall depiction of what our grouping looks like. And what is a special interest group, which was one of the very first things that I spoke about. So a special interest group is basically like a mini community within the Kubernetes community. Primarily because, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of people in the project, and you can't just be like fishes in a giant swimming pool swimming without any direction. So special interest group specifically focuses on specific areas and are categorized basis those features. So the categorization is as below. I mean, it's as seen on the screen. Feature areas, we have SIGs based on feature areas, we have SIGs based on plumbing. We have specific SIGs that are dedicated to the documentation alone. So all of that, what you see on the website is not just governed by one SIG. There are like 2-3 SIGs working towards the blog, towards the website content, towards the tutorials. There are a couple of SIGs there. Then Kubernetes, as you know, has been adopted by various cloud providers. So we have SIGs that are related to cloud provider adoption, and then there are meta SIGs. Now, what are the examples of some of these SIGs, you may ask? Because honestly, this is a lot of stuff to take in, and you'd probably like to see some of the examples that are under each of these areas. So that's what I'll be walking through. Some of the feature area SIGs are listed here. And like the name defines, it sort of deals with a particular feature. And folks in these groups dedicate their efforts towards developing that feature. So SIG auth, SIG apps, SIG auto scaling, SIG CLI, all of these are focus groups that are having like a collaboration towards a particular feature. Then plumbing SIGs. Now, these three are the plumbing SIGs that are there within the Kubernetes ecosystem. And they, for example, Nikita and Nabarun are part of SIG API machinery, and they basically deal with the underlying infrastructure that powers Kubernetes as a project. And meta SIGs. So SIG release is something I guess both, I think all of us mentioned, if I'm not wrong. And SIG contributor experience is another thing that we all mentioned. So SIG, both of these SIGs are cross-cutting across various functions in the Kubernetes, and it's sort of like the metadata that's there within everything. So meta SIGs that way. And then you have the documentation and website SIGs, which, like I said, basically deals with the website bit of it, as also various aspects of documentation. We've recently even got a specific documentation related SIG, that is SIG security docs, which deals with aspects of documentation related to security specifically. And cloud provider, as you already are aware, there are many cloud providers, and these are SIGs that are dedicated to that. Now, the second part of our subgroups was working groups and subprojects. So when there is a requirement for a collaboration between SIGs or inter-SIG efforts, You have working groups for those specific purposes, and sub-projects are there for specific focus areas, even within a special interest group. So the specific sub-projects that are there are listed in this slide, and the working groups that are there currently are listed on this slide. So how do a SIG and a working group differ, you may ask? And in terms of membership per se, they don't. But in like acquiring or starting to contribute, they don't. But like I said before, SIGs are focused on one specific area, and working groups are more when collaboration is required across SIGs for achieving a particular purpose. So that being said, these are the list of sub-projects that are also there. And these focus on specific areas within SIGs that require, enhanced focus. So these are the specific sub-projects. And user groups are the third category that we were looking at. So the last one is committee, but the one of them was user groups. And in the entire Kubernetes ecosystem, this is the only specific group that has no code base ownership. And these are formed with a view to bring large groups of folks who have a specific topic of interest. So big data is one of those topics of interest, and they have been shared across large groups of users, which is why we have a user group for that. And committees. So committees are, as you guessed it, more governance related. And when we speak about governance, we obviously want the best of our folks on the committee, so that so that they're able to guide us and set policies around how the project functions efficiently. So most of the committees are you can join by invite or by election only. So Nikita here is a steering committee member. And currently there are 3 committees: steering committee, product security, and code of conduct. I'm really not sure if you're able to see the other half of the screen, so let me just, yeah. So, okay. So the now I know that I said a lot of stuff in this, but let's boil it down to this. You obviously do want to know how to join a SIG, how to join a working group, or how to join a user group, because let's face it, committees are joining by invite or election only. But if we're talking about joining the others, I've really not laid any content down for that. So the very first thing that you need to do while figuring out where to direct your efforts is to pick the right SIG. And how do you pick the right SIG is first by figuring out what are your strengths and what specific projects are you looking to contribute to. And once you understand that, you need to go and figure out which SIG or working group or sub-project covers that specific area. Now, we know that it can be a daunting task, so ask us on SIG Contribex Slack channel and join that SIG or sub-project. Now, how do you join it? Because that's the first question that comes to mind. Like, I know what I want to do, but I really don't know where to start. So you need to join the SIG specific mailing list. And this is really open to anyone. And I'm sort of going to demonstrate how to do that. So once you join a SIG specific mailing list, make sure you also actually join the Slack channel, because that's where all our conversations are. And we really don't want you to be missing out on any of it. So if you do both of these, and if you actually subscribe to both of them, it's pretty much just that. You've joined a SIG. So let me just actually demo that to you. Just a second. So if you can see here, is everybody able to see my screen with the GitHub page? Suraj, Nikita, Nabarun?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So if you can see here, I am currently not part of a lot of SIGs. So I'm going to try my hand at joining SIG architecture. All right. So I'm just going to navigate to the SIG architecture charter that's there under Kubernetes community. And if you can see here, there's a lot of information regarding the sub-project meeting, the office hours, the regular SIG meetings, all of this. So if you see here, you can check out that there's a mailing list. And all right, my Windows acting weird. So, all right. So this is the SIG architecture group. And if you see here, you can, there's a join group button. I just click that and that's it. Like you can customize your settings to every new message, send daily summaries or whatever. But I'm just gonna do combined updates here because that's how I normally get my updates. And that's it, join group. And I'm in the SIG. So that's part how you join a SIG. And yeah, so when you talk about joining a SIG, I also told you that you need to join a Slack channel. So that's sort of, what I'm going to be talking about in my next section about communication. But these are the quick reference lists that we'd like you to have, which deal with the various stuff that I spoke about in a more verbose manner. And it's like in a written down format. So y'all would be probably using that after the session gets over. So now moving on to the communication bit. So when I spoke about joining the Slack channel, spoke about joining the mailing list, that's what sort of makes up most of our communication bits, because let's face it, when we actually talk about a project that spans across the globe with different time zones, with different folks that are from different nations, it's difficult to sort of have this constant communication thread going on. And all of our communication is basically governed by Kubernetes Community Code of Conduct. And this is the first time I'm getting to say this. So our community code of conduct basically states that we have to be excellent to each other, which means that we any sort of harmful, abusive, harassing language or behavior is sort of not tolerated, and you need to be as excellent as possible to one another. So all of our communication, whether written, spoken, or whatever be it, it is governed by this specific code of conduct. And how do we keep in touch? As mentioned before, we do have the mailing list, the Slack, and most of the times when specific groups want to meet up, like for driving issues towards completion, or just keeping in touch in general, we get on board a Zoom call. So obviously, given that, like I said, there are a lot of contributors across the globe, this is not always possible, given because time zones matter, and there may be a sort of not even reluctance. It's obviously not comfortable for everyone to sit up late in the night or get up early in the morning and all of that. So some async initiatives that we have undertaken are, have alternating between Slack threads and Zoom meetings in SIG contribect. So what we do is have a bi-weekly Slack thread meeting, and alternating weeks of Slack thread meeting and alternating weeks of Zoom meeting, which means that everybody is able to contribute at their respective time zones. And we do not have to pressure people into actually attending them. Another async initiative that we've actually had in the release team, we started actually the APAC friendly timings. And also we are transitioning to more talking on the Slack and mailing lists rather than, relying on in-person meetings, because, personal lives and in general life happens and sometimes you're not able to actually make it. So that's about the keeping in touch. But from whatever I said, I know we sound like a community that does not know how to have its share of fun. But guess what? We do. And this is sort of like a clear depiction of how we like to have our fun, even when we are on Zoom meetings. So this was one of the Zoom meetings we had, wherein folks were required to put on their best creative caps that they had and attend the meeting. And from the looks of it, it is really, it was really fun to be a part of this. And we are heavy users of emojis. So please, if you are, if you're joining us, you do not have to sort of keep your emoji game outside of the community. You can definitely bring it on. And if you can see here, this particular post in Slack has a lot of emojis, and we totally keep adding more as and when we get some interesting ones. So that being said, I'd like all the folks on this chat call, or whoever is watching this, to sort of join the Slack channel. That is slack.k8s.io. And step 2 is to go and find these Slack channels. That's #indev, #users, and introduce yourself. And feel free to step up your emoji game, because we all love good emojis, don't we? So with that, I will be handing over to Nabarun. And I hope you stop by Slack and actually do introduce yourself, because we love welcoming new folks into the community. So handing over to Nabarun now.
Let me just share my screen. Okay, I hope my screen is visible now. So what I'll do now, after that awesome introduction into our ways of communication, I'll give you a brief overview of how the source code is structured and where does it reside. So we use GitHub for storing all of our source code, and we have a few organizations on GitHub. The primary one is github.com/Kubernetes, where we store most of our code, if not like majority. But I'll give you a brief overview of what repositories we have and what purpose do they serve. So Kubernetes/Kubernetes, or you will find in a lot of places people talking about K/K, and K/K just means Kubernetes/Kubernetes, abbreviated form. So this is the primary repo where all of the code resides, which powers Kubernetes, at least the core parts. Now, there are a lot of folders here, lots of directories, lots of glue stuff. So after I give you an overview of how the repositories look like, Nikita will be giving you an overview of this specific repository, showing you through what each directory means. So for now, let me defer that. I'll just go on and tell you about some important ones that we have here. You see the Minikube repository, which is owned by Cluster Lifecycle folks, and Minikube is one of the projects which helps people to bootstrap a Kubernetes cluster right on their local machine. Then we have the test infra repository. Test infra repository is basically everything which relates to the Kubernetes CI infrastructure. It has the source code for our bots. It has source code for what tests should run for, let's say, pull requests, which tests should run after a pull request is submitted as pre-submits or post-submits, and a lot of configuration on how our testing cluster should behave. So Kubernetes tests around Kubernetes themselves, and most of it is owned by the community through grants. Going ahead, we have the website repository. The website repository contains whatever you see in docs.ks.io. So basically anything powered on the Kubernetes documentation is residing here. So if you want to contribute to the documentation side of things, this is where you should look at in detail. There is this Ingress Nginx project. I mean, like if there are implementers or Kubernetes cluster administrators here, they must have like at least once or twice saw this project as to how ingresses behave and how do you point traffic from the external world to inside your Kubernetes services or deployments. COPS is one of the other orchestration or like Kubernetes installation mechanisms. I think it's been there for some time. So this is all like code or things running infrastructure, but we have a lot of other meta repositories, if you can call that. So one of them is like SIG release. So if I show you SIG release, it contains information about what is happening inside SIG release. So it contains how do you join us, what is the release team, and then each of these directories has some context. So if I go to release team, it says like what are the ways of working for release team. It contains documentation on what should a release team lead do or what should the shadows do, and same for each role leads. Similarly, we have configuration for all of the releases. It tells you who is in the team, when is the meeting happening, what's the schedule, all those kinds of things. We have such meta repositories for a few other SIGs as well. Going ahead, you might wonder like how are Kubernetes features decided? It's a very big project. There are a lot of contributors and there are opinions as well, right? There will be like lots of different opinions. So at Kubernetes, what we do is whenever you start, whenever you think of extending Kubernetes or adding a new feature to Kubernetes or maybe fixing or extending old features of Kubernetes, you file something called a Kubernetes enhancement proposal, which in short is called a KEP. I'll show you just small one KEP maybe. Let's say warnings. So this is one of the cool things that went in the previous releases. So right now, if you do kubectl post 1.19 kubectls, if you're using a deprecated resource, you'll see a warning. So if you see, that's how someone proposes a new feature to Kubernetes. You need to go through some process. There is a sign-off checklist. There is a template which you need to fill, and then reviewers will review this. That is like going into a lot of detail. I'll come back to the Kubernetes organization, and there are other tooling as well along with it. One more important repository to mention here is Kubernetes/community. This is where you as contributors or we as contributors look at most of the important things that we should take care of while writing code, or how do we communicate with people in the community. So if you see, every SIG and working group have their directories here where, let me take an example of API machinery again. You'll see like, what is the charter of API machinery special interest group? How does the leadership look like? What are the sub-projects of API machinery? Then there is the contributor guide as well. So if you go to contributor/devel, you see a lot of important things that you might encounter or you might have questions on, like how do I run this test, or how do I run a local Kubernetes cluster from my changed code? How do I design Kubernetes APIs? All those kind of things. Now, hopping on to other Kubernetes organizations that we have. Kubernetes has a lot of clients in other programming languages. The one that is, I think, mostly used at this point of time is client Go, which resides in the Kubernetes org itself, because it's like the code is coexisting with the Kubernetes/Kubernetes code base. But then the other clients are generated from the OpenAPI specification. And this is the organization which, the Kubernetes client organization, hosts all of the code, all of the gluing required to generate a client. So I would request, like, if any of you are interested in contributing to a language-specific area of Kubernetes, you can look at this organization. There are official clients in Python, Ruby, JavaScript, Haskell, and there are some standards as well. Not all clients may implement everything. After client Go, the most used one, I think, in terms of metrics is Python. It's heavily used in the operator SDK and all of those things. The next organization that I want to show you is Kubernetes SIGS. So Kubernetes SIGS is, like, it does host projects, or it hosts source code or meta things for every SIG specific work. So things may be more suited to, like, let's say, for example, KubeBuilder. KubeBuilder is one of the ways, I'm trying to find KubeBuilder. Oh, yeah. So KubeBuilder is one of the ways that you can build or create Kubernetes APIs using custom resource definitions. And so those kind of things, when they're like very area specific, they usually get hosted at Kubernetes SIG. And right now, I think we have a promotion mechanism. Any SIG, whenever they want to start a new project, they do in Kubernetes SIG, and then they have a promotion guidelines to get it to Kubernetes/Kubernetes, the Kubernetes organization. Do note, although we have 3-4 different organizations, they are all managed by the Kubernetes community. They are under the Kubernetes community charter. Also, like, one specific repository that you as new contributors could be indulging with is the org repository. So this is the Kubernetes/org repository is basically the configuration for our GitHub. So whenever you want to be part of the Kubernetes GitHub organization, you have to come here and file a request for membership. That's how you become a Kubernetes GitHub organization. It gives you certain privileges, like if you raise a PR, tests will run for you by default. We'll come to those nitty-gritties later as well when we see the PR workflow. So for now, we are covered on those points. I would like to now delegate to Nikita to go over the Kubernetes/Kubernetes code base. Also, one more short thing. If you folks have any questions, keep them coming on the chat. We will keep on answering them. Nikita, you can go ahead.
Perfect. Thanks, Nabarun. One thing I do mention is, like, I see folks joining the Kubernetes Slack and the in-depth channel, but no one's talking that much. So, like, feel free to talk about, like, what you want to get out of this session, or in general, if you've tried contributing, what problems you faced, because we're all here to help. And so we use that channel mainly for, like, posting good first issues or tasks that you can pick up, and, like, also help you out in actually getting a PR out and merged too. So start talking then. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm on Linux, it takes a while. I'm going to share screen button. Okay, here we go. So when we talk about the Kubernetes repo, you go to github.com/Kubernetes/Kubernetes. We also call this KK, as Nabarun also mentioned before. And now when you see this repo, there's like a lot of directories. And it is very confusing. Like when I started, I had no idea how everything is structured. Even after like a year or like 6 months after I started contributing, I still had no idea where everything is. I still don't know where everything is. So I'm going to try to explain things that I know well, and also the things that are important. So there are a lot of directories here. So I won't cover everything. I would cover the ones that are most important to understand. So how I'm going to structure this is, first I'm going to give a brief introduction about the directories that are important and what they exactly stand for. And then I'm going to look not just at the directory structure, but also at the code. So I'm going to cover kubectl's code, like what happens, like starting from the main function to what happens when a command is executed, and where does that code live, how does it work, everything. So yeah, let's get started. So in all of this, there are two main directories which are the most important. One is the package directory, and one is the staging directory. Now, staging is a little bit special in Kubernetes. It's not a pattern that's followed in all other Go projects, and I will cover why it is, why do we have that, what it does, and all the history behind it. But first, I'm going to hit like the package repo. So one interesting tidbit about the package repo is that historically, almost all the code in Kubernetes used to live here. It is, and was a huge monolith repo. But then we don't like monoliths. It's very hard to maintain. A lot of other reasons that you all probably already know. So we wanted to move the code away from like one single package to different repos. And that's actually where the staging directory comes in, but I'll go into more of that later. But we still have a few directories here, and you'll see that there's like a little bit. So it's mostly having business logic for things. So for example, if I go to the controller directory, it has all the Kubernetes controllers in Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is made up of controllers that basically reconcile all your Kubernetes resources. Like you create a pod. What happens when you create a replica set? Right. So there's a replica set controller which looks at this, which makes sure, like, if you say you want, I don't know, three replicas, and it makes sure that you have 3 replicas. If you only have 2, then it like adds 1 more, things like that. So all of this code lives in this controller directory. So like if you go at the replica set directory, it will have replica set.go, which contains the controller. Similarly, there are, I don't know, 20, 30 controllers, I think. So you have the garbage collector controller, you have the daemon set controller, the deployment controller, the namespace controller, resource quota, stateful set, a lot of them. I also like this directory a lot because once you look, so like all of these controllers follow a pattern, and this is very helpful in understanding what's actually, one, going on in Kubernetes if you want to contribute, of course. 2, if you're building operators or custom controllers on top of Kubernetes, they also follow the same pattern as out of the inbuilt controllers. So the inbuilt controllers have been here for a very long time, and like people have fixed a lot of bugs. So it's very like, it's a very like good code to understand, and how Kubernetes, what's a Kubernetes pattern for writing controllers. So coming to the package directory again, there's some, like all of these directories are like, yes, they have some business logic, but then things like kubectl. So they don't have too much code. So like you'll have a command directory, but then you don't have too much. You just have like one convert folder and just like a few files here and there. So where is the actual kubectl code? So fun fact, it was all moved from the package directory to the staging directory because we don't like monoliths. So what is the staging directory? So the staging directory is kind of special because so if you like go to staging source, it's a little bit longer, like kh.io, you'll find a lot of directories here. The special thing about these directories is that all of the code that's in, like, say, the client Go directory is actually copied over to github.com/Kubernetes/client-go. So if I go to github.com/Kubernetes/client-go, I'm pretty sure there's a typo somewhere. Yeah, that's a typo. I'm not gonna go into that because I want to be mindful of time. But basically, if you go to the client Go repository, it's all of this thing, all of these directories are copied onto its own directories. Now, why do we do this? So for example, client Go, that's the Kubernetes client. That's the client, or that's the code that you will import in your controllers or in your operators that you're building. So basically, if you build or write any code on to play like with the Kubernetes API, to play with the Kubernetes client, you're going to use client Go. If you're going to import client Go, and if it's not in its own directory, you'll also have to import the whole Kubernetes code base, and you absolutely do not want that because this code base is really huge. To avoid that, we split it into another repo. Now, the most logical thing to do here would be to actually like have the code sitting in another repo. Why do you have like a copy in the staging directory? The answer for that is mainly because one thing is that it's kind of like it's very difficult to maintain like in general, like in development practices, like making sure like all of the code that goes into client Go is matching the Kubernetes patterns, and from like a reviewer and contributor standpoint. But that's another story. That's like historical, that's very legacy reason. The main technical important reason is that so client Go depends on these two libraries, API and API machinery. So things related to the API. Now, if I move the client Go directory to its own repository and I don't have a copy here, I'll have to like update the go.mod. So like the dependency, like I'll have to manage the dependencies of API and API machinery by myself whenever there's a new Kubernetes release. And while this might not be really a problem for client Go, it ends up becoming a really huge problem when you have so many repositories to maintain. So that's kind of one of the reasons why it's still in the staging directory. The idea is to move out to its own repo, but I'm not sure when that's going to happen, to be honest. So there is a bot which takes the code here, publishes it out to its own directory. It also does a lot of things around the dependencies. So it manages dependencies on its own, and we don't have to do anything. So it keeps running by itself. Cool. So this was all about like the staging directory and the package directory. So the package directory has a lot of business logic, but then we've been moving the business logic from staging, from package to staging, and we copy the code from staging to its own directories. Don't have the chat. Let me open the chat. Are there any questions until here? Okay, if you can allow to unmute yourself, like does anyone have questions, and if, like they can raise their hand, ask. I wouldn't spend too much time on questions, but if you have one or two questions, I'm happy to take it here before we move on to other parts of the code base. I'll take that as a no then. Okay, so moving forward, I'm going to talk about APIs. This is the place where, okay, I see another question about like, where are the operators code? So the operator code, so like if you're building an operator on top of Kubernetes, you'd be writing an operator by yourself. So like you would own the operator and it would be in your GitHub repo, in your GitHub username or GitHub organization. To build the operator, you would likely use the client Go library. So that's the one like that's over here. So not this one, actually, you'd import github.com/Kubernetes/client-go. If you don't want to use the Kubernetes client directly, you can use frameworks like KubeBuilder and controller runtime, things like that. Those repos are in the Kubernetes SIGS org, which like Nabarun had mentioned before. Cool. So next I'm going to talk about APIs, which everyone gets confused about. I get like still confused about sometimes. So fun thing about the Kubernetes APIs, is that for the same API, you have two different types. So usually if you are building an API, you probably write a Go struct for it. Interesting thing about the Kubernetes library, Kubernetes project, is that you have these Go structs, but then you have it two different places. And everyone gets confused about like why we have it at two different places, because they almost look the same. So what's really going on? The thing in Kubernetes is that to maintain backward and forward compatibility, we have two types. Like we have something called as internal types, and we have something called as external types. The thing that you interact with as a user is always external types. So you always interact with versions. So things like a V1 alpha version or a V1 beta version or a V1 version, like of deployments, right? So all of that are called external types. And internal types don't have versions. So they're just like a Go struct without, it's just like an API without any version. So there's no V1, there's no V2, there's nothing. It's just a internal type. Now, why do we have this? The idea is to maintain backward and forward compatibility. So like if you create a resource in V1 beta 1 version, but you want to get it in the V1 version, you can still do that. Now, how does Kubernetes like convert between versions losslessly? How does it do like lossless conversion and like not make you understand like it did all this magic behind the scenes? So what's going on behind the scenes is that it converts from V1 beta 1 to the internal type. So like external to internal type, and then back again to the external type. So you have, so like for always like the conversion goes to the internal type. So that's what makes the API design very tricky, is that whenever you add another version, or whenever you change the API, basically add another field, change the version, do things like that, you always need to make sure that it's compatible with the internal type. So the internal, like that's like the biggest thing which makes API design in Kubernetes very tricky. So what is like, where does the code stay and like what does that look like? So the package directory contains the internal types, because these are not copied onto any other GitHub repo. So you wouldn't be importing this at all. The staging directory is copied out. So you could import this. So this is basically the case.io API library has all the external types that you can import and like use it in your projects. So this is what you are actually interacting with. The package thing you won't be seeing anytime if you're a user. So let's talk about maybe deployments. So I go to apps. So since these are external types, so they have versions. So you have V1, V1 beta 1, V1 beta 2. I look at V1. And then all of the types, basically, they live in a very aptly named types.go file. And one more thing, so like Kubernetes has a lot of generated code. So whenever you change a file, the chances that you have to generate code from the changes you've made is very high. So all of these are like generated code. The things that you mostly care about are like types.go file. So I look at this types.go file, and it contains stateful sets. So like it says type stateful state is a struct. The spec and the status fields for the stateful set. And then there's a spec, yes. So here's the spec. It has replicas, you can mention label selectors, the template, and things like that. So this struct is of V1 version. Now I'm going to go to the package. Again, this is like where people get confused, API and APIs. So let's forget about API for now. I'll come back to it later, but let's forget about it because it doesn't contain any code that we care about. The thing that we care about is APIs. So we look at APIs. What we're looking at stateful sets. So like we're going to look at apps. This is just helper code, so don't get confused about like having versions here. So we look at types.go, and then you'll have a stateful set with spec and status. So it's kind of the same code, so it can get kind of very confusing, like why is the same code in two places? But the idea is that this package API is your group version, API version group. Types.go is the internal type, and staging, source, case.io, API apps, your version, and types.go is the external type. So if you are ever trying to understand what the Kubernetes code base, where does all live, like a pod, stateful test, replica sets, where does that live? It's here. It's all defined here. If you have, like, this is also where the documentation is generated from, basically the comments that are mentioned here. So that's what you see. So that's one thing about APIs. So let me actually go back to the root. So we covered two main things. We covered the package directory and we covered the staging directory. Yes, they have a lot of other code. We will not cover everything, obviously, in a small workshop, but this gives like a good idea of what kind of patterns Kubernetes follows for all the other code, for all like how all the other code is organized. Next, we're going to look at three other directories, which are also a little important. One is the command directory. So as the name suggests, it contains the binaries for everything. So all of the main functions. So the entry point of all of these binaries, you'll find it here. It's very minimalistic, so it doesn't contain too much code per se. So like if you look at kubectl, there's just like one kubectl.go, which has a main function, but that's literally it. The main business logic lives in the staging directory, which I will cover in a bit. But then the command directory has all the binaries. And yeah, so like you'll have kube API server, you have kubectl, you have kubemark, which is used for running tests, controller manager, things like that, cloud controller manager. Cool. After command, there's this directory called test, which, as you all can guess, is used for testing. So unit tests are defined in like underscore test.go files next to the code that it's related to. So we won't like have a special directory for unit tests, but for integration and E2E tests or end-to-end tests, we will have, they all live in a special directory. So integration tests live in this folder called integration. So again, it's like categorized depending on like if it's related to deployment, is it related to kubelet, and I don't know, pods, things like that. So I won't go too much into detail again. So okay, so one more thing to mention though about like what's the difference between unit test, integration test, and E2E tests is so unit tests are like very basic mocking of like testing of the methods that are in the code. Very simple, small test. You want like actually testing the whole functionality of the code. Integration tests take it one level higher. So what integration tests do is that they test against an API server. So there are no pods being run, there are no containers being run, but then you can test against an API server. So you are testing some part of the behavior. But then for other things, like where just this much won't suffice, you have end-to-end tests which are run against a full-blown cluster. And these end-to-end tests take a lot of time. So if you open a pull request in Kubernetes, it might take like 45 minutes for like all tests to run. So these do take long. So if you are creating a pull request and making some changes locally, I usually just like run the relevant unit tests and I let the CI do the hard job of running the integration and E2E tests. If it complains, I look at what the error is and then just like take it from there. So the E2E test is in the E2E directory. And then we have like, again, kubectl, storage, and like it's mostly categorized in terms of SIGs that Divya was talking. So like we have the app SIG, the auth SIG, things like that. Cool. So we saw a few things, recapping. We saw the staging directory, we saw the package directory, the command which has binaries, package has business logic. Staging also has a business logic, but copied out to other repos. Test has tests. One last thing I would cover in the directory structure thing is the hack directory. So the hack, as the name suggests, is very hacky. It's you wouldn't like, obviously, like it's hacky, so it's bash, and it's very yeah, like if you like bash, this is like the place for you to see. So what scripts are here? So they're mostly I'd say two types of scripts. So one is for like helper scripts, like if you want to create a cherry pick, you can just like run the script and it'll open a cherry pick pull request. Or if you want to install etcd, you can run install etcd.sh, things like that. Now, where things get interesting, the second type of test is that, like I said, we have a lot of generated code in the Kubernetes code base. Generated code basically means you create code for like API types. We don't want to rewrite a lot of code by ourselves, so we let like code do the hard job of generating the code. So how do we generate this code? So we have something called as update scripts. So we have a lot of update scripts actually, which do different things in different places. The update all script will update everything, but it takes a while to run, like an hour or so again. So I usually don't use it. I don't think anyone uses it. Like the CI runs this to ensure like everything's clear. But once you get, maybe like if you're starting out, try running this, or like let CI run this. But once you get familiar with the code, you will understand that like you'll understand which scripts like you need to run. Like maybe if you're changing docs, you probably just need to run like generated docs, or if you're changing APIs, you need to run a bunch of them, but like code gen usually changes APIs, things like that. And this like formats according to GoFMT, things like that. So these are update scripts. Then we have something called as verify scripts, which are pretty much like update scripts only. They call the update scripts, but they verify that your whatever changes you've made have the generated changes. So if you say things like, so verify code gen.sh, it will make sure, what it basically does is that it runs the update script, check like diffs between whatever changes you have made and the updated code. If you have not generated the changes, there's a difference. So it will complain, like it will say like your code is like, you need to generate code, blah, 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 blah. So that's when you do that. So you'll find these updates and verify scripts referred to in a lot of places. So that's very important to understand as well. And yeah, that's kind of it about the hack directory. Next, I want to go a little bit into like the code part of kubectl. But before I do that, I want to see if anyone has questions. Does anyone have questions and maybe want to raise their hands, and or should we like take this in the end? Okay, so I see there was two things. Like one thing was about the pictorial representation of Kubernetes code organization might be helpful. Yes, I agree, and we do need to do it. And that is on the maintainers, and we'll try to do that. Oh yes, good point. Like someone brought up about the local up cluster. So that was in the hack directory. I should have covered that. I use that almost all the time. So if you are making changes and if you want to like create a Kubernetes cluster with the changes that you've made, you can use this script called local app cluster.sh. I don't think it works on a Mac. Like at least a kubelet won't work, but I don't use a Mac. I don't know. I know it works on Linux properly, and you can use this to like get a lightweight cluster, play around with it. It's very useful for like testing things when you've made changes. But then you can also use things like kind, and like there are many other ways. So this is just like one way that's pretty easy to honestly work with. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. If you have any more questions, please drop them in the chat or on Slack, and I'll look at it later. Cool. So kubectl. So what happens when you run kubectl? So now we know a little bit about the directory structure. So like, let's look at it from like someone who just learned about the directory structure. So we want to look at kubectl. We want to look at the entry point of kubectl. Entry point would be near the binary, and the binaries are in the command directory. So we go to the command directory. We look for kubectl. There's a kubectl.go file here. And then there's a main function here. So this is like the entry point for it. It's pretty minimalistic. It doesn't do too much. It mainly calls command.execute. So it like executes things with some flag setting, but it's pretty minimalistic. The business logic lives somewhere else. Now, As someone who just learned about the Kubernetes directory structure, the business logic either lives in package or staging. If you remember when I was like going through things very quickly, there wasn't too much in the package kubectl directory. So one thing we know is that it's not in package. So it's not in package, it's mostly in staging. So we'll go to staging, source, k8s.io, and kubectl. So in kubectl, we don't want docs, we don't want images, we don't care about test data. We want package because that's where the code lives. Now, one thing to understand over here is that there are a lot of directories here. These are kind of like helper code. The main one that we care about is command directory. This is pretty interesting. So like the way this is structured is that each kubectl command gets its own directory so that you can close your eyes. If you care only about, I don't know, the create command, you just like go to the directory and make changes. So it's pretty nicely organized, and you don't have to like care too much about all the other commands, and just like we can focus on one command. And each folder has like one main .go, like a .go file and a test file for the unit test. I think API resources is the only one which has like API resources and API versions, so like 2 commands, but otherwise it's usually like one folder per command. Let's go into like cmd.go. So this is a huge file, but I'm gonna scroll a bit to reach this thing. Where is it? So yeah, this one. So over here, commands are basically categorized into groups. So like this gives you a big high level overview of like how commands are like structured and what's basically going on. So we use a Cobra CLI like library for this to for CLI handling. So if you're not familiar with the Cobra library, that's also like one good thing to make yourself familiar with because it's used everywhere. So the way commands are grouped is basically like basic commands like create and run. And then you have some more intermediate commands like get and edit and delete. And you have deploy commands like scale and roll out, cluster management commands like drain and taint, and what else do we have? We have troubleshooting and debugging like logs and exec, some more advanced and setting commands. I won't go into everything. One interesting thing is that, so like this mainly takes this thing called IO streams. Now this is something that was created like for one reason. So it was IO streams is basically in, out, and error. So like standard in, standard out, standard error. So to make sure, so like we faced a problem with like whenever we were writing unit tests, it was hard to inject these like the input, output, and error for unit testing. So for like making it all standardized and for like easy mockability, we like put it into this thing called IO streams. So you'll find this referenced in a lot of places. So like this is the command.go file, which like calls like, so it says new command create, new command run. So it's like creating commands, like all of these commands. Now let's look at one of these commands and see what's actually going on. So if I look at the annotate one, it's pretty easy to understand. So let's just pick this one. There's always so like for each command, there's always a command option struct. What it contains, it has the data required to perform that command. So over here you have the annotate options. It has basically all the flags that this command takes. So they are all in the struct. There's some helper variables you need to care about. There's print flag. So like printing is basically for so like the printers that were created. So one thing is it's for like whenever you do kubectl on your command line, the things that you see to make it like look pretty, that's why the printers come in. But when you look at like on a low level side, it basically is used for like taking the input like from the flags into the structure or the data that we want to have. And we did this, like why have this thing called printing is because, so this was like recently, like when I say recently, it's been a few months, but like when it was introduced, why it was introduced is because if you don't have this, like if you don't decouple the flags and like the input, like the things that are given to the flags and the data, it becomes really hard for testing also, because you would have to like invoke a command line execution, and doing that for each small test isn't easy, and like it's really hard for like building unit tests. The other reason is also because you can reuse this. So like all commands follow this pattern, so you can reuse this code for all the other commands as well. Record flags are basically like if you provide a file, it uses these things. So this was, and it also takes IO streams, the thing that I was telling you about earlier. So you have an annotate option, so command option struct, which contains flags and some helper variables for the operation. I won't go too much into this. So this is like when you do a kubectl explain or help, you'll get all of like the explanation plus examples. Now we will create an annotate options or a command options struct. So we have this constructor called new annotate options. It takes IO streams and it will like pass out like some, like it will create a new record flags, like basically initialize the struct. This is also the place if you want to set default values for the flags, this is where it goes. After that, we are going to create the command, like the heart of the thing. So this creates a Cobra command. We have a thing called new command annotate. If you remember when I was looking at like the categorization of those groups, this was the function that was called. So like new command annotate, new command create, things like that. So we first create the annotate options, basically this method here. Then we create the Cobra command. So you pass on like the help text, and then you have the run function, the run part. So that is three things, and this is like the heart of the command. So it does three things: complete, validate, and like running actually. So complete basically means that it will take all the like data and the flags, like whatever like data values you provide, it will bind it. I mean, we kind of do it here as well. So like basically complete the annotate option struct. And then validate, just make sure that whatever options you passed are correct, and run, like does the actual running. So we'll see. So this is like a standard Cobra library format. So you take in, like basically bind these flags to the annotate options variables. And yeah, this is kind of pretty much it. Let's look at complete. So like here's where complete comes in. So complete, so like to complete the annotate option struct, it sometimes like it'll call the client. If you need some information that you don't already have, which you can get from the client, it will like call the client. It runs some like, or maybe the config, get whatever data you want, like you want like some resource and pairs, won't go too much into it, get the annotations, things like that, and store it in the this O struct, which is basically the option struct we have. And then you validate it. So there's like if else conditions here. So if things, so like if you have a field selector and you've also specified all, then you cannot do that. So it will throw an error. If you get an error message which you would like to improve, this is again like the place to go at. Finally, we have the run method. So what the run method does is actually run the command. So we have this pattern called a build-up, like a builder pattern, which basically takes, if you've like provided a file, it will take the value from the file. If or like if you've not provided a file and if it needs to like talk to the API server, it does that. And like all of this, its code is somewhere else for the builder, but like this is what it does. And eventually it follows a visitor pattern. So it will look at all the objects that you've specified, all the resources that you've specified, like go about it one-to-one and annotate it. So you'll have update, like it'll call update annotations many times, create a merge patch if needed, And then this was list, and then finally print your object like, okay, like this has been annotated. And that's kind of it. So just to like recap a little bit, so you have like the main function in the command directory, because that's where all the binaries live. When we look at the business logic, you look either the package or the staging directory. We looked at package, we saw that there wasn't too much there. Then we look at the staging one. In the staging one, we find a lot of business logic. And the business logic is categorized in such a way that they are split across, like each command is in its own directory. And you can look at the directory, all of them follow the same format. So you have an option struct, which has the flags for the command. And then you do 3 things to each command. So you complete, so basically you fill in, like set all the flags, you validate the flags, and finally you run it. So for running it, you'll probably talk to the client and like get all the values, and then it follows a visitor pattern. So it will like visit each object that you specified, and then update it or do whatever, like patch it, annotate it, things like that. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking. This was long. And if anyone has questions, like I don't like, I want to be mindful of time. So if anyone has questions, please put it on Slack or in the Zoom chat, and I'll get to it after this. And that's kind of it. I think it's time for break right now, if I remember the slides correctly. Nabarun, is that right?
Yep. So we will take a break right now for, let's say, 6 minutes. We will come back at 3:30. Let me shortly share my screen. So we will give you 6 minutes to get going and like brew your coffee, however you like, or tea. And there's this amazing thing for you folks. So if you were planning to attend KubeCon EU, we do have a discount coupon to get like 25% off on the tickets. You can note this discount code and maybe go and register for the conference. With that, I'll keep a break now for 5 minutes. We will reconvene at like 3:30.
I think we can start if people are back, especially the speakers.
I'm good to start if everyone's here. So I'll just turn on my video. I turned it off on account of low bandwidth, guys. Sorry.
No issue.
So should we get started?
Yeah, I think, yeah, we can start.
All right, cool. So let me share my screen here. Okay, so, okay, that was a bit too quick. So with all that walkthrough, that very detailed walkthrough that Nikita and Nabarun actually gave, I myself have learned quite a few things. And I mean, obviously it's not that everyone has to sort of dive in at the deep end, and a lot of folks would like to start off, with basics and start off at a beginner level. So how to find your first issue, and how do we sort of navigate that tricky first couple of PRs that we make is what I'm going to speak about. So without further ado, let me get on to the first screen. So this is a link. The link that you see on your screen is sort of the go-to link for all good first issues. And mostly when we say good first issues, they mean that are suitable for beginners. So this link is something that we have and was recently shared by Bob and Sadev on the SIG Contribex meeting as well as on Twitter. So this is one really great way. And you can sort of use this link as a good reference link and bookmark it somewhere so that you can regularly go and check out good first issues for your first couple of contributions. Another way of understanding good first issues is obviously via the labels. And if have this link and you really want to actually start contributing, what you would possibly do is navigate to the GitHub repo for Kubernetes, and suppose you have an idea in mind regarding which area you want to start contributing to, you just need to filter with the labels good first issue as well as help wanted so that you can start contributing to them. And obviously, as person who's not yet gotten into organizational membership because you are a new member, are a new contributor, you will not be able to assign the issues to yourself like folks who are in the organization do. For that, I will be walking through, and we will have a playground where you can contribute and figure it out. But the best way here is to sort of comment on the PR that you are interested in working on, and say that you are interested in picking it up, and reach out to the person directly on Slack and say that I would like to contribute towards this particular issue, and take it forward from there. So for those who are a little more experienced, we have issues wherein help is wanted, obviously, because most of our work is done on this. But this is for slightly more experienced folks who are ready to dip into the deeper end. And this particular link that I have pasted on the slide will sort of get you all the list of issues that require help currently. And like with the good first issues, or the process I mentioned before remains the same, because as non-organizational contributors, you possibly would like to you possibly would like to work on an issue, but you do not know how to sort of approach it. So the very first step is to comment on the issue that you are interested in working on, and have that communication going on with the person who's opened it. And post that, reach out to the person on Slack and see if there's more clarity that you can gain from that sort of conversation, and start filing the PRs against the requisite repository. Now, like I said, when we sort of have the different subgroups, and when we had this organizational structure in place, we also have different roles in the contributor ladder, because obviously when you start out, you are not a contributor, you are a contributor, but you're not part of the Kubernetes organization in the GitHub. But you obviously start out as non-contributing member, non-member contributor, then you become a member. Then from there, you with the number of, as and when you are, a trusted member who can sort of figure his or her way around the project, and you are able to sort of provide your expertise, you will be, it's not a promotion of sorts, but become a reviewer, and go over and above that with slightly more privileges is the approver and the sub-project owner. Actually, this would be a better way to sort of understand the different contributor levels and the ladder, as I mentioned in the last couple of slides. So as you can see, once you have done a significant number of contributions to the Kubernetes project, you can actually speak to a few members who you have worked with to sponsor your membership to the project. And that is the very first step that you take in order to becoming a Kubernetes member. Once that's done, you will be sort of elevated to other levels basis your experience in that particular SIG or in that particular area. And the topmost level is that of the owner, which basically is the highest level of privilege that you can get within the project. So that's sorry, that's something that's how a ladder of involvement looks like. And yes, the famous Kubernetes patch, how can we forget that? So this is a very tricky thing because on the CNCF store, this is available for $1,000. So it does look like a very simple thing, but it's given to folks who have the most number of contributions and have achieved levels of contributions that a beginner cannot at this point fathom. So the Kubernetes contributor patch is probably one of the biggest honors that I would possibly think of getting when starting out. So yeah, and I will now hand over to Nabarun to talk about the Kubernetes automation bit with labels. I'll just stop sharing my screen, I guess.
Thank you, Divya, for that explanation around the community and how people can find their first issues and grow up in the ladder. Let me share my screen. Well, here we are. So the Kubernetes community has a lot of labels, which are like GitHub labels that we use so that we can manage state around the pull requests or issues, and then help the contributors work easier or the maintainers work easier. So this is a screenshot of a sample PR. So when you file a pull request, there's this amazing bot called KDSCI robot. We will come to the bot later on as well, which goes through the PR commit, like commits in the PR and the contents, and then suggests you some actions. For example, here you see that it added a label called CNCF-CL no. Now the thing is, if you want to contribute to Kubernetes, you have to sign the contributor license agreement. I'll just drop the link on the Zoom chat. So here's an action item for you all. While I go through the slides and explain what are labels and everything, if you did not yet sign the license agreement, please go ahead and sign this agreement because we have some demos coming up in the next sessions where you will file commits to the Kubernetes repositories. And in order to get your pull request merged, you should have the CLA signed and ready. Going ahead. So if you see labels are like, when you start assigning labels, it becomes a scenario where you're collecting Pokemons. So I hope like everyone here knows about Pokemons, but it's like a cartoon character, which was like very famous like 15, 20 years back. So think of every label. There are a lot of labels and it can get overwhelming. Similarly, how Pokemons used to be. But that is how you collect them. Now, labels are used for like multiple things, as I said earlier while showing this. So if you see here, right, there's a label called approved, which is someone, if you remember the contributor ladder, there is a person called, persona called approver. So an approver can come and they can say that /approve or approve your PR, and then it gets that label. There are labels which define which are areas. Actually, you know what, let me slide ahead and show you all the various possible combinations. Now, this is just a screenshot of the issues list of Kubernetes/Kubernetes, where if you see whenever someone files an issue, they can specify what kind of labels they should put. And there is an issue template where everything is noted down. Let me actually show that as well to you all. So we'll create a click on the issue. Let me try to file a bug report to Kubernetes. Now, if you see, the template explains or goes through the thought process of what you should do. And if you see, the label kind/bug is already specified because we chose to file a bug report. And also, like if you hover over the label, you will see what does it mean. There is a short description. Not all labels have them, but most of them do. So you file this issue template, and then voila, you're done. I'm not doing it. It will just create unnecessary chaos. Let's see some existing issues. For example, let me find one with like this one. So this is something which relates to custom resources. And when the user who is reporting it filed it, told the Kubernetes community that, hey, I think it belongs to API machinery. And then a SIGS/API machinery label gets added. Similarly, maintainers can come in, they can accept the triage and tell you. And then contributors can also mention the priority, and by /help, it basically marks anything as help wanted. So Divya showed you how to find issues that need help, or the community understands that there is a need for people to come in and pitch in. They don't need like specialized knowledge into a particular domain. Well, going back. So for every issue, there are some labels which are required and help the triage persona to get an initial idea of how, what things the issue relate to. For example, you put like a SIG label, you put a kind label. Now, what are kind labels? I'll come to that later. But in the meanwhile, what you can do is just explore a little bit about what are the bot commands by going to this link. Let me try to paste it.
Nabarun, if you want, I can post it in the chat.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Thanks for that help. Now over to the SIG level. So you now know what SIGs are there in Kubernetes community and what does a SIG do. So every SIG owns a particular area of code. So every SIG is distributed by the area of code or the domain that they specialize in. Whenever you file anything, let's say, which talks to the authentication layer of Kubernetes, you mention that this is related to SIG auth. Similarly for other areas. And this is how you do it. You just comment that /SIG contributor experience. And there are some automation, there are bots which will kick into action and add those labels. Then comes the kind label. So the kind label helps maintainers to see what kind of issue that you are raising. It may be a bug that you found. It may be failing test in Kubernetes. It may be a flaking test. It can be feature, although like we discourage putting feature requests in the Kubernetes. The reason being we do have a way to add Kubernetes features, the enhancements thing that I showed you earlier. So instead of filing a kind feature issue, you file a Kubernetes enhancement proposal. Similarly, documentation, cleanup, and design. Now, there are lots of things that the community is working on. Now, for everything, how do you define what kind of priority it belongs to? So the community had come up to consensus with like 5 buckets of things, like issues or PRs which are critical, urgent, which may be important in the near future, or which may be important in the long term, or backlogs that might be like, hey, I want to work on it, but then I don't have time, but then let's do it later on because it's not very intensive or intensive to the product, or it will like the Kubernetes product. And there is awaiting evidence. So this is a bit important in the sense that let's say you file a bug, but then you don't put how you don't write in the issue how do maintainers reproduce it, or how did you find it? So in that scenarios, you will get a request for evidence, as in what did you do to encounter that bug? This is very important for the maintainers, because whenever we want to solve anything, we have to like reproduce the same on, let's say, our machines or wherever. The next area. So if you remember earlier, we talked about something called subprojects. Now, area kind of conforms to similar lines, but it's not a one-to-one mapping. So let's say there is SIGS CLI. Inside CLI, SIGS CLI people mostly work on the kubectl client. Now, if your issue or PR is related to kubectl, you can put a label called area/kubectl. It helps the triagers or the people who are reviewing your code to identify or get a better context on what you're changing even before looking at the code. Now, going into the triage level. So it's a bit interesting thought, but how the community right now works is because of the huge influx of issues, every new issue that comes in gets automatically labeled as needs triage by a bot. Now, the triage people or the triage group of every area of code come together and meet in, let's say, the SIG meetings or a specific meeting. Like API Machinery has a different SIG meeting as well as a different triage meeting. They come together and then they can just instantly filter through issues and see which ones need triage first. Because when they triage it, they change it to like a triage accepted. And if you need more information, and if like it's similar to priority awaiting evidence, like in order to even triage it, we need more information. So that's where this label comes into picture. Now for pull requests, a short brief on how we work on GitHub is nobody, no human has access to merge any pull request. Everything is done through a bot. The reason to do it is the GitHub UI does not give you the granular control, but when we use a bot, we have more fine-tuning capability. We can say that, hey, you are not an org member. How can you LGTM? You can say that it looks good to me. This is done so as to reduce spam as well. As there was a question on the chat, what happens if like any random person or any random contributor contributes malicious code? So if you are not an org member, your code won't be even tested. That's why you need an OK to test label. I'll show you what that label is. For example, let's say, so you have to remember that not everything is malicious. People from outside the organization also contribute code. It's just an added gate. So if you see, since the user is not part of the organization, the bot automatically adds a OK to test label. Along with that, the bot also detected that the person who committed it is not has not signed the contributor license agreement. So it shows that, hey, can you go ahead and please sign it? And then somebody can just ping something on the commit and there will be a recheck. Now, you as prospective new contributors, how you might have thought like, hey, I'm not even a contributor. How do I even test my code? This becomes a vicious cycle. So fret not. People can come in, maintainers or any org member can come in and write something called a OK to test. Can write a OK to test. I'm not going to comment here because I did not see the code. Usually it's a good practice to see the code first and do an OK to test. That's how our trust system inside the Kubernetes community works. Let me get back to the slides. Coming back to the context. So every PR requires an LGTM and approved level to be merged. So someone can tell you that, hey, so LGTM can be applied by every org member. Anyone of you, when you are an org member, can go to any PR and say that it looks good to me. Now, this does not mean that the code can be merged. The code is only merged when both of the levels are present. So who does this approval process? There's the approver persona. So when reviewers know of, reviewers review a lot of PRs and then the SIG leads or subproject owners think that, hey, you have done really good reviewing PRs. We think that you should be an approver. When you reach an approver stage, then you gain that capability to do an approval for a PR. That's how the PR process works. Now, the release note label. So really, there are several release note labels. It's like a meta. So every feature or every change that you introduce to Kubernetes, if it requires a release note, the bot will flag it, that release note needed, or you can even say none. But then whoever is reviewing the PR has to approve it, that it is indeed something which does not need release note. Another special thing is cherry pick approved. So you might remember Nikita showed you about the cherry pick pull.sh hack script. So you can say, so what happens is regressions do happen in a code base. So let's say we have already shipped out Kubernetes 1.20. Now, if you saw there's a fix, there's a bug and you have fixed it, you will obviously merge it to master so that the next release contains that. But what happens to the previous releases? If it's a big security vulnerability, you are essentially encouraged to backport it or cherry pick it to that branch, to the previous release 1.20 branches. So this label gets applied when a cherry pick approver approves it. This is usually the release team, the patch release managers. There's a person called patch release manager who actually put this label. Going ahead. This is again a screenshot of showing like some PRs where this kind of labels are put in. Well, I'll show you one interesting label here, which is do not merge hold. So what happens is, let's say there are a lot of reviewers and approvers there, and some people are not in consensus that this should go in. So people can put a /hold. So although any PR can have approved and LGTM labels, if it has a hold label, it will not get merged. You have to cancel the hold. Well, this is very interesting. You can file a PR where you can assign Joe. I don't know if he will, if Joe will come up and approve it, but then you can give it a try. I'm joking because don't do this with approvers, because everyone gets pinged whenever you assign someone. So be very prudent when you are assigning someone. The bot will let you know what you should do in such scenarios. Yes, about what did we short, the short links for finding help wanted and good first issues. Usually, they are segregated by the help wanted label and the good first issue label. And we kind of, so it's a very vague or grayish area in the sense that it's a qualitative analysis of an issue. People can come in, maintainers or triagers can come in and say that, hey, this is something that may be suitable for a new contributor. Can we push it out to new contributors so that we can increase the community and make people learn and more aware about features going on? As you see, you have more help wanted labels. Well, you may be in sea of information right now, but I would say keep soaking it. Also keep on asking questions on in-dev. I see lots of people asking good questions. You can also ask questions. Don't feel shy because there's more coming up in terms of automation. So I mentioned a lot about bots. I showed you the Kubernetes CI robot and everything, right? I'll give a brief on what those bots are. And before that, I'll take a short 1-minute detour and see if there are any unanswered questions. Okay, under what SIG does the Kubernetes CI bot come under? It's maintained by the SIG testing. There's a specific group called Kubernetes Infra who also manages this, but broadly it's handled by SIG testing. Okay, I don't see any other question. Cool. Welcome back. Okay, to the bottom. So you all should say hi to Kubernetes CI robot because it is one of the most frequent bots that will interact with you. So feel free to talk to Kubernetes CI robot. Sometimes Kubernetes CI robot comes up to your issues and PRs and then gives a heart emoji. That means Kubernetes CI robot likes you. Well, going ahead, some important bot commands. You might have seen already a sneak peek into those things. There's a /assign command where you can assign someone. There's a retest command. So there have been questions of how the CI works, right? So whenever any pull request is filed, the CI kicks in and starts jobs in our infrastructure, and it will report back with a comment saying if tests are working or not. Let me see if I can show you an example. So here you see. So whenever the contributor filed this PR, the bot went into action and ran everything. And then it came back and told you, hey, the following tests or tests failed. You can also retest to run all failed tests, or you can specifically test this one. So let's say you know that let's say there are like 10 tests here and you know that you probably will break it. So you don't want to waste resources running it again. So you can specify which tests you want to run. I'll give you an overview, like I'll give a in-depth analysis again when I file an actual PR. The next command is /close. It basically closes a PR, very simple thing. So you can close a PR using the commands itself. There's a /cc, as simple as like the email carbon copy. You can just tag a user to a pull request or an issue or anywhere. It does not work in an issue if I remember correctly. You can't CC people in an issue. Assign does work everywhere. Now, important question. What workflow do we use? Well, this diagram may be a bit complicated, but essentially what you should do is there is github.com/Kubernetes/Kubernetes. Then you fork the repository and you have your user/Kubernetes repository. You then clone it locally and also add the upstream remote so that you can fetch things and then rebase on your branch or even the master, which we are going to rename to main soon because of naming issues. Then we suggest people to use feature branches. So whenever you work, you don't put your commits to master. It's better to put everything to feature branches. Although it's not like that you may be able to push it to master because master is a protected branches, and even a maintainer can push. I think it requires some special bits like you need to be admin of a repo. Well, that's a lot of things. So this again is the flow. You submit a pull request, you add labels and nodes there. Then bot kicks in and then validates the labels, the needed labels. You can also add new labels that you want. I'll show you all of this to you in a short while. And then other contributors come in LGTM. The code owners or approvers will come and approve. Usually like this step comes first, LGTM. We will show that. Test pass, and then the bot merges, the infrastructure merges the PR. The specific code path or application that you can say is called tight. I think this is a copy. So as I showed you using the example earlier, the bot will tell you who to assign or who to ask for reviews. So this is kind of a short blurb on what you should do when you start contributing. You attach the SIG label so that the SIG knows that there is an issue or a PR filed like on their ownership, like on their code ownership. So the ideal way that you should do is, remember the Kubernetes community is huge and the community every time faces issues with like getting bandwidth of reviewers and approvers. So what you should ideally do is attend the meeting, attend the SIG meetings, although they are not at very friendly time. Most meetings are not very friendly time to our time zone, but there is an async way to do it. You ask on Slack. Let's say there is an issue and you want attention. You just go to, let's say, open an issue for API machinery. I go to SIG API machinery and then write, hey, can someone have a look at it? And post the link. Someone will eventually look at it. Or you can send even an email to the list, to the mailing list of that specific SIG or working group. You can also contact owners, but then usually it's like it's discouraged in a sense, like if you're already talking to someone, then it's fine. But then it's better to keep all communication on the public channels so that it becomes a collaborative environment and anyone can come in and pitch into your request. I explained already the test results thing. And when you file a PR, you'll see bot messages, you'll see code comments, you'll see test failures. So you have to be on top of it. Like you have to keep on iterating on the PR. And we also follow the like ideology of like push code early so that it gets reviewed early, so that if there is issue or there is an illogical flaw, you get to know earlier. Well, let me get my hands dirty now. Like file a pull request. Well, it's a live demo. Murphy's law may not be with us at all times, but I hope that the demo goes well. Let me pause for a bit and see if there are any questions. Okay, there was a question like, what is the criteria to get SWAGs? That is already answered.
There was a question about how to get mentors.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for pointing me to that. So how do you get a mentor in the community? So there are a lot of mentorship programs in the community. There is a, let me just search for it. I have the link handy. There's a page for it, which so, oh wow, nice, interesting. Let me, I'm not able to find the link to the mentorship guide right now, but there are a lot of initiatives in the Kubernetes community to get mentorship. So if you have, well, that was a good joke. Like, mentors not found, but that's just on web. If you come to Slack, if you want mentorship, just ask away. A very important thing to remember when you start contributing is to ask as many questions as possible. Whenever you ask smart questions, people do come to you and mentor. Do talk to us on SIGS Contribex or on InDev or on like those specific SIGS channels. And there are some SIGS channels also. There are some SIGS which also run mentorship programs. For example, SIG Release runs an awesome mentorship program called the Release Team Shadows. So I even grew out of that ladder. So I started being a release team role shadow, then became the lead for that role, then became the release leads shadow, and then currently I'm the release lead. So this is just an example of getting mentorship. So you do have lots of avenues to get mentorship. There are programs. So if you're a student and want mentorship, we participate in programs like GSOC, Google Summer of Code, or Google Summer of Docs, also Outreachy. There is a mentorship program from Linux Foundation called LFX. You can leverage all those opportunities to actually get mentorship. Ashwini asks, is mentorship only for students? No, mentorship is not only for students. Mentorship is for anyone. Those organized programs are only for students because of the program rules. But then if you're not a student and you want mentorship, just come to Slack and then ask away your question. And then even ask like, hey, can you help me out? this is just that you need to get mentorship. I hope I'm able to answer that question well. Okay, cool. Let me reshare my terminal. Oops, sorry. Can you see my screen? Is the terminal visible?
Yep.
Okay. Is the text editor visible right now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Suraj. So I'll walk you through an issue that I found interesting. It's also open for new contributors. Where did the issue go? Yeah. So to give you a brief, you might know about logging, right? Whenever you do certain actions in your code, you log events. In the Kubernetes code base also, we have such logging directives. And klog is basically a library in or a package in the Kubernetes ecosystem, which helps with logging. So in the previous release cycles, what happened was klog had always been churning out unstructured logs, in a sense that it may be, there was a clear directive across the project on how you should log things. So a KEP was filed called structured logging, which defines the scope of what should a log's structure be and how should that log be written. And then the process of migrating from unstructured logging to structured logging started. Now here, from this example, I'll show you how do I file a code change to Kubernetes. Now, how do I find this? I read the issue first. Although I've read it already, that's why I have more context. But what I should do is go to my terminal, run this to find some place where unstructured logging is used. This is one of those packages. And then select one. I'm choosing token just for sanity here because it involves a lot of less changes. But feel free to choose anything. And then there are directives like I should do at minimum one top level directory at a time. So I have to change everything in that top level directory. So now what do I do? Since I read the structured logging guide before, I'll actually change the code and show you. So when you see here that you do klog.errorf, which basically formats the string and churns out an error and logs it to wherever the logging is happening. The structured logging way of doing things say that I can't use errorf anymore. I have to do something called klog.errors, which is structured. Now, how do I do it? The signature says that I have to pass in an error, which is of the type error, a message, and key values. Now, let's go ahead. So, create an error. Let's say here the same, could not update token. Mistake. Now there's a string that I need to pass in, which is the message. Now here's the tricky bit. We should actually not pass it as an error because there's an error. We actually pass it error. The message is could not update token. So here, if you see where we are passing what triggered this error, then a contextual message, then we will pass actual things. In this specific context, what triggered to this? Like, what was the token that triggered this error? What I'll say is, is basically what raised the error, or let's say token. And I don't have any token here. What shall we do? Let's just pass something, foo, because I did not get the token. The error is for that branch. Now this is how I changed to errors. This is very sloppy code. I'm just showing as an example. It may not be correct. Now there's one more errorless thing. Now you know how we should do it. There's an error here. Let me pass nil for the sake of it. So it's for a token request. So token request and the token. So this is just a patch. Just going into very detail to show you how usually a contributor will do it, so that you also know the thought process behind it. I'll run the test, specifically the unit test for this package. It will take a bit time. Oh, wait, it did fast. So yeah, my changes don't break any unit test. It might break integration test, but we will see. Since I'm being lazy here, I'll not run the P2A test locally, but you could do it. Now I talked about using feature branches. Let me create a new branch. Let me be structured logging okay. I have made it ready. Okay, I have this ready. Now let me commit. Okay. What do the guidelines say? What should I write? So the guidelines say that the PR subject should be migrate directly to structured logging. Let's use a similar format for the commit itself. Oops. Sorry. Some should be edited, but we'll do it the lazy way then. Migrate ekg slash slash token. Okay, I have the commit. Let me push it to my fork. Cool. And now I see that I get a beautiful, what do you say, URL. File the PR. I go ahead and yay. So as I showed you the issue template, there are pull request templates as well. So now you should read it. It's very important to read it so that you get context on what you should do and what you should not do. Since I know it already, not reading it, but you know this. Now you specify what type of PR is this. What did we do? We did a clear, right? We migrated from unstructured logging to structured logging. So it's a cleanup change. Is it an API change? No. Is it a replication? No. Is it a flake? No. Is it a regression? No. So I'll remove everything. What this PR does and why we need it, I just copy the same thing. It's literally what we are doing. Which issue this PR fixes? Now this is important. When on GitHub, when you merge a pull request where you specified this specific format, fixes, number, something, it automatically closes the issue as well. But here it's a umbrella kind of issue where several PRs will be raised. And you will see a note. I forgot where is this note that you should not do. Yeah, don't mark it as success. I'll not do it. I'll just say part of this one. What is the number? 98976. Cool. Special notes, my reviewer. None. If you have any, you should put it. Does this PR introduce a user-facing change? It does. Here, the user can be a cluster operator as well as an user, but this specific change that we are doing changes the way logs will be charged out. So I have to write a release note. The release note eventually is the same, that PKG kubelet token has been migrated to structured logging. Is there any additional documentation? Example, KEPs, usage docs. There are actually. So what I can do is link the KEP, because this is part and parcel. Now, there are some important things. Although the pull request template does not mention it explicitly, it is there in that blob of information earlier. But I should tag it as SIGS CLI because it's a it's a SIG node change, and it also involves instrumentation because logging is handled by the instrumentation special interest group. What is the priority for this? It should be important soon, in my opinion. I think the issue also mentions, yeah, you should use important soon. Is there any special instruction that I should follow? You must include, okay, there are changes. Okay, cool. So I don't need to follow anything. I'll do some more things. I put SIG, I put priority, I have kind here. There are no extra labels. I'm just thinking, nothing much. Well, you see, the automation has already put labels. Now, as I told you, like every new issuer PR gets this label called needs triage. Also, since I have already signed the CLA, I get labeled as CNCF CLA yes. Size access is a label that tells reviewers that how big this PR is. This is basically a rule-based system where it compares against number of lines changed and attaches the appropriate labels. Now, what comes in and gives me more information, as in, okay, it is awaiting triage. Now, it also suggested reviews from a few people and also gave me an information that this is not approved. So now what happens is the correct way of doing things, or the better way of doing things, is let the reviewers come in and put reviews on the change that you made. And once you have an LGTM on this PR, basically you have an LGTM label, you go ahead and assign the approver who is asked. Why we are doing this is, usually what happens is in the community, there are a lot more reviewers compared to approvers. So you ideally would not ask approval for a change before even people tell that it looks good. So it's the logical way of going through the flow. And with that, here's the flow. And okay, so since I'm already an org member, I did not need that OK to test, and the jobs have already been triggered. And maybe a few seconds or few minutes later, I'll get information on if a test failed or not. So yeah, that's all on this. I'll see if there are any questions. Prabhu asks, are there any branch name conventions? Not really. I don't know of one, but usually you should put a branch name which is same, but then it does not matter much. Okay. In the PR can be discussed over the respective SIG channel, right? Yes. You can discuss it on the SIG channel. You can discuss it on the SIG meeting, whatever suits the scenario. Suraj asks, like, are you going to look at other ecosystem projects? Not today. Today we are going to look at just Kubernetes/Kubernetes, but at least for KubeADM and Minikube and Node Problem Detector, whatever we are telling now is the way you do it, because they are part of the Kubernetes community ecosystem. For Prometheus, I don't know how their CI or how their dev workflow works. So that can be covered as a separate thing later on. Karupaya asks, I usually see doing discussions in open source projects. Okay, I think it's a comment. I think there will be. When issues are not either or both labeled by help wanted or good first issues, you can still go ahead and take them up because there is no hard bound that you have to take up like help wanted or good first issues, issue labeled issues only. The reason those labels exist is to give a signal, to give a positive signal that they are deemed to be for new contributors. Not necessarily other issues are not for new contributors. You can go to any issue depending on the depending on what level of familiarity you have with the code base. Where do the PR builds run? They run on the community infrastructure. So the Kubernetes infra working group maintains the fleet of PRAO instances or the build systems. Whenever any PR gets filed, a request gets triggered on our on PRAO, and then PRAO runs build containers for them and then tests those specific paths. I think sailing email information log is very public. Okay, yeah, that is an interesting paradigm. If the no reply email address failed the check, I'm not very sure what are the mechanics behind it. But usually, like the commit authorships are checked for those things. Maybe you can ask away the question on the CLA help. There was a question on, is there a place to find SIG meeting schedule? Yeah, Nikita answered it. Thank you. Cool. I guess we are through all the questions on chat. Here on, I think we are going to take a break.
Instead of taking a break, can we like head to the hands-on session because we're low on time? And everyone wants to, I'm sure, wants to get their swag.
Yeah, that's true. So I'll just do a 1 minute quick roundup of how and where you can help. I'll just share my screen shortly. Okay. So where can you help? You can fix bugs, or you can. We have discussed this a lot, I think, in the chat, but just enumerating things. And this is not even an exhaustive list. There is no exhaustive list of how you can contribute to Kubernetes. But you can fix bugs, or you can help improve the documentation. You can refactor code. So what I did is basically refactoring some code. You can increase the test coverage by writing end-to-end tests, or you can write unit tests for any part of the code base which is not tested yet. Or you can participate in releasing Kubernetes. Come join the release team, and it's a shameful plug. You can help triage issues. You can start out by writing blogs around how the project is structured, or like whatever we discussed right now, and then that can go into blog, and that serves as a good opportunity to contribute. You can educate the community using those blogs or by giving mentorship. You can also evangelize Kubernetes through various meetups, conferences, in your local user groups, even other user groups. And there's a list of such more ways. The list is pretty big and still non-exhaustive. Overall, I would say that people ask like what kind of skill set is required to contribute to Kubernetes. You don't need anything. You just need the curiosity to contribute. Come to Slack, come to the meetings, ask questions, and you grow along with the community. That's how an open source project works. We're going to skip the break for now and jump onto the hands-on session since we are like really low on time. I'm giving over to Nikita.
Cool. I'm gonna share a link in chat, which you all can open up while I try to share my screen, which might take a bit of time. Okay, here we go. So I'll try to keep this quick because I know we're running short on time. Everyone wants their swags. I will not try to bore you. So this contributor playground repo is for you to play around with. You can create pull requests, add any content you want. It doesn't like, there are very less rules over here. So if you go into the so github.com, Kubernetes 6 contributor playground, India directory, Kubernetes kids PLR 2021. There's a workday directory here. So I will walk through what needs to be done right now. After I'm done, please do the same. Like basically what you'd be doing is we'd be creating a pull request to add some content in this directory. It can be any random file, markdown file. Just add your name so that like it's related to you. So just add your name.md. Anything can be in that markdown file. Yeah, let me walk through that, and then I'll explain how you can get your swag. So click on attendee instructions and resources. So that should take you to a markdown file. You should have already signed your CLA, or else we cannot merge your code. Join the Slack, please. And now fork the repo. So like if you go to Kubernetes 6.playground repo, there's a fork button on the top right. So if you click on that, I already forked it, so it shows me like this, but otherwise you'll see your GitHub username here, which you can click. So fork that and then clone it to your local computer. So you can do git clone, this URL, replace foo with your GitHub username and run it in a terminal. So like I've already done that. So I have it cloned in my local computer. And now you like go into that directory. So I will go into the Kubernetes playground directory and add this. So like, so what you've done is you've cloned your fork, but now you also need to point to the upstream repo. So like the Kubernetes SIGS, the main repo directly. So you usually add an upstream remote for it if you're familiar with Git. So I'll not try to explain too much about this. Just put the command and it'll work fine. This command is not exactly necessary, but we put it in a GitHub Workflow instructions, because what this means is that you will not be able to push to the main repository under any circumstances, because you don't want to push like stray commits just by mistake. This isn't too like necessary if you don't have right access to it. I have admin access, so I'm going to do this just to be safe. Cool. So I'm going to do a git remote dashboard to check if everything looks good. So it can fetch and push to my fork, but it cannot push to the main repo. Looks good. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to create a folder, a file in the work directory with my name. So I'm going to go to India, BLR. I'm going to use VS Code. You can use your favorite editor. Okay. So I will create a file called empty. Say something like Kubernetes is awesome. You can say anything you want. Please just don't write inappropriate stuff. Oh, I should have created a new branch. So let me just do that. Something like, I don't know, just, think I have branches. So we've created a branch, and then I'm going to select, you do a git status. It shows that you've made some change or you've added a file here. So to actually add it and to commit this file, you need to do a git add. So I'm just going to do a git add. After this, I can commit it. So I'm going to say and push it. So when I do push, Git will output a command that I need to use. So I'm just going to copy paste this one. And GitHub's very nice, and like it kind of renders the pull request link for you. So I will click on that and it will open this up. So this whole thing is derived from what basically Nabarun just showed you, like creating a pull request to the main Kubernetes repository. This isn't the main Kubernetes repository. So like this template is here to teach you what are the best practices. I will do something bad. I will remove all of this. You should not ever do this if you are creating a pull request to the main Kubernetes repo, but it's a lot to go through right now. So I'm going to do that. And then I will say adding, I don't know, something PR for the PLR meetup. And I'm just going to create the pull request. This process is, if you're familiar with Git and GitHub, this is so trivial. Why are we doing this? The whole idea is to kind of make you familiarize with the pull request process in the Kubernetes org. So like if you already signed the CLA, you'll get the CNCF CLA yes label. I'm an approver, so it already approved my PR. You will not get the approved label here automatically. Size extra small means it's just like a one-line change. So we have like excess small, like normal sizing up to XXL. And then if someone, and now, okay, so now I can use bot commands to tell Nabarun to please LGTM my PR. So I'll be like, Nabarun, like I'll assign it to him so he'll come to know that he needs to review this PR. I'm also in a good mood, so I will play around, and there are like these fun commands that you can use, which are in the attendee instructions doc. So if you say poof, it will add a picture of a dog. It should add a picture of a dog. Oh, come on, show me a dog. Yes, here we go. So you can play around with like lots of similar things. So like if you say meow, it shows you cats. If you say pony, it shows you a pony. If you say joke, honestly, I feel like it's a very bad joke. So I don't know if you want to try that. So once it has the LGTM label and the approved label, so in this case, it was already approved, but otherwise someone else would do an approve. It will get merged. It takes some time to like sync it, but once it syncs that, it will get merged automatically. Now here's how you get your swag. You have to create a similar PR. It doesn't have to be like any markdown file in the work directory that I just created. The instructions are here, like the link I just posted in chat, and the attendee instructions doc. Follow this process. The first 20 PRs which get merged, you'll get a $10 free, like completely free shipping, free everything, coupon code for any swag in the CNCF store. So I think you can get like socks, stickers, a beanie, think you can get a lot of things in $10 in there. So try to do that very quickly. And we'll reach out to you for like next steps and like how you can get this back. But first, like create the PRs. We'll be there to like LGTM and approve quickly. If you create a PR, you can maybe also like, I mean, we'll look at the GitHub repo, so you don't necessarily have to do this, but maybe post a link in the in-dev channel too. So just like to know that you've contributed. So I'll stop sharing my screen so that I can go LGTM, approve all the PRs that y'all are creating. If you have questions and if you run into trouble doing that, feel free to like maybe raise your hand, which means we can unmute you, I think, or ask in the Zoom chat or ask on Slack, and we'll help you figure that out. Cool. Sounds good. Okay. Stop sharing. So I see 2 PRs already created. Let me actually just share my screen too. So it's once we are approving. So I'm gonna do LGTM and approve. Funny. Thanks for adding the kind label. That's nice. And thanks for following the template too.
Extra points.
Yeah. Sorry, we cannot give you extra swag.
So I'm going to call out RTN Pro here. Like RTN Pro, I don't think you are eligible for this work. You contributed to Kubernetes earlier as well. Just kidding.
You'll get your swag. You'll have to fix your CLA for it to merge. So fun fact is the CLA bot is not open source right now. So it's owned by the Linux Foundation, but since it's not open source, we don't even have logs, so we can't even we don't even come to know what's going on. But there is a plan to like make it open source, like create a new bot. So see. For this PR, Aditya, can I request you to add at least one line in the doc? Just to.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Please don't put in empty files because that's sort of, defeats the purpose. So don't, so at least add a single line if it's possible.
I like the PR title.
Well, in a few days, Kubernetes will be on Mars. So checks out.
think there is. So during Halloween, we added this command. I think it just, does it work? Nice, I'm hungry now.
Just a short announcement, like while we keep on reviewing the PRs. Just around the end of this session, we intend to take a group photo with all people's video on, but it's not mandatory. Like if you're not comfortable turning on your video, it's perfectly fine. But if you do turn your video, we will take a screenshot of the Zoom meeting and put the photo on the README of this workshop so that people can see.
After looking at that picture, I was like, speakers be imagining their Saturday like this, but I took it away.
No, if
Anything
it's
for
fine,
the
I'm
community?
enjoying this. Yeah. Well, you are also here.
Also, I see a lot of people who did not sign the CLA. Please do sign the CLA, and then what you can do is the bot does not automatically refresh the PR, but you can maybe mention a small comment like ping, and the bot will recheck your commits once you sign the CLA. Maybe we can show an example.
Yeah, let me do that. Can you take care of it? Okay, already on it. So for instance, I'm gonna pick any random peer, so like maybe this one. So you can do something called check CLA, which will also like trigger a recheck of your CLA. If you've already signed it, please don't use it like if you haven't signed it, if you haven't made any changes. But then check CLA will do that. It won't, I don't think it like adds a comment again, but it just like triggers it. If you've already signed it, then this thing becomes like green. Otherwise it's like red.
Meanwhile, I think we can open up the floor and then, so that people can discuss things, or if they want to come on voice and ask questions. Prakash, Suraj, can we turn that on if possible?
Yeah, sure. We can.
You can also stop sharing, but if you don't, like if your PR is not approved and if you've created it, like put a link on Zoom chat or something and we'll take a look at it.
Yeah, I just, yeah, Suraj, sorry, go.
No, I was just saying, like, if anybody wants to ask questions, just use the raise hand thing and we'll unmute you. So yeah.
Also, like, I will show you something. So we have a very big community, and even in in-depth, we have a lot of people. And don't get scared in the next photo, but we have a fleet of people to help you out. You will find some familiar faces from here, and so just wanted to call everyone out in the community who have been helping contributors to get started and mentor them. So if you look around in dev, you will find many of the faces from here. Like with online events, usually like you don't see faces and usernames, but when world reopens, maybe we will meet. So yeah, just wanted to share this. I stopped sharing it.
Yeah, that was the last in-person KubeCon. So yeah. All right, people ask questions.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi guys. My name is Sujit Kumar. First of all, thank you so much for all your time, and it's really been a wonderful experience attending this event today. And this is my first time here, and I am a beginner on the Kubernetes side. Okay. But I am primarily coming from data storage and private cloud background, right? And been in the industry for about 14 years. So I have actually posted this question in the beginning of the session. And what I'm trying to understand is, I mean, mainly two things, right? So first thing is, I mean, I'm actually preparing towards my CKA. Okay. So I'm learning the Kubernetes and I'm also preparing for the CKA. So the first question is, how being part of this community would help me, actually on my Kubernetes journey. The thing is, because I'm not coming from a programming background at all, right? I'm mainly into the services background. So my in my role, what I'm actually doing is I'm responsible for more of about pre-sales and post-sales kind of a role wherein designing and deploying the solutions, right? And as you know, since everything is moving towards the DevOps world these days, that's my that's one of the reasons why I'm also moving towards Kubernetes, right? And I'm so that's my first question. So the question, first thing is, I mean, are we also doing anything from a deployment perspective now, or are we only focused on the Kubernetes? What do you call the coding improvements and things? Or do we also cover anything with respect to how do we deploy things on Kubernetes and administrate things on Kubernetes?
I think I can take that. So like today's session was specifically, like I said earlier, we did this for the first time. Like in general, all the sessions that we do, they are about Kubernetes and various other projects. Like we do themes, like let's say networking in Kubernetes, then everything that's in the networking ecosystem of Kubernetes. People will talk, give presentations and stuff like that. This has been a special meetup in that sense. Like we wanted to like people. So general, the usual journey of most of the people is they start learning Kubernetes, use it in their day-to-day work, and they're like, okay, this is cool. How do I, or I found this bug, how do I fix it? So this is the the second stage, that like I found a bug, how do I fix it? Meetup. But generally we do theme-based things like storage, networks, anything like that. So
okay.
Yeah, if you keep following, I think next meetup, the March meetup, will be something like this. So yeah.
Okay.
And hello, I'm Ravi. So just to add to Suraj's answer as well. So yeah, because I've also been working with Kubernetes for a time, but yeah, mostly I've been consuming it. So it's time when I felt like contributing to it as well, and that's where I've joined this meetup, which is yeah, pretty helpful. So just as additional point from experience point of view, that I've also found the KubeCon videos to be very good. So I would encourage that as well. So different people, they showcase their experience in the KubeCon videos, that what helped, what did not help, and so on. So even that would help you.
Also, we have allowed participants to unmute themselves. So right now it's open for everyone. So you can just unmute yourself and ask your question. Feel free to do
that. Hi guys, this is Danny. And first of all, I would like to thank all the organizers and all the attendees. This session, which was organized, is very important. I feel because I read somewhere in the article, India, since we are the tech guys working all over the world, so we are consuming. On the Stack Overflow, we see the number of usage more on the Kubernetes part, whereas the contributing part is less. Someone had actually posted up this thing. I guess this is an important stepping stone for me as well, as an individual, to start contributing something small which can be useful. Yeah, thanks guys. Yeah, that's it.
I share that feeling. Like it has been discussed a lot before. Like even in the Kubernetes community, we have so many people. I mean, we have advantage of knowing English and being able to like work with others throughout the world, and still we have very few contributors compared to other non-English speaking countries like China. So yeah, I think this is going to be a help for a lot of people. And I hope like after this, like today's session was conducted by Nabarun, Nikita, and Divya. I think others who have joined today, they step up and do a similar session in a few months' time. So that will be a great testament to this this thing that we are doing.
Yeah. On that note, like since this is kind of a kickstart in India, and we have been thinking for a long time to actually conduct a session like this. So I'd like to first thank you to reach out to us and then like facilitate this session. But we have been planning to hold like long-term or like continuous sessions on contributions or like internals of the Kubernetes community. So I would say everyone do stay tuned on the official channels of Kubernetes. We will come back with more sessions. It's part of several initiatives from the community, from CNCF, from the meetup groups, from a lot of places.
ITN Pro, do you want to say something?
I have got like some frustrations. I find like as a contributor, when you're like not working for a company where you're paid to do for some of the work, it's so difficult to like compete for issues and pull requests that like you go and you think to work and somebody already lands say PR, and then you find this that guy works in say either like some of the companies who are vested on Kubernetes. I had a very bad experience with Kubernetes Nginx Ingress where I had submitted a PR and put it up for review, and then the upstream, without even giving a review comment, he just created another PR and kind of like some of my changes were there, but he added some more changes and like created a PR. I felt like totally my PR got hijacked. So yeah, I feel that it's a very cutthroat competition for like people who are working as like volunteers or say part-time contributors. So I have been going through this like rough ride for quite some time. Yeah.
Number 1 point or even number 0, I'd like to say sorry from the community that this happened with you. We suggest all contributors to actually look if there is an existing PR and not go forward with their patches if the existing patch is already actively discussed. So I'm feeling sorry that if you had like experiences like this, but we as a community are trying to be following to our code of conduct and like being nice to each other. So I would say like usually like the thing that I follow is, so coming to your main point, like how as a person who is contributing in their free time to Kubernetes, right? For me, like when I started contributing to Kubernetes in my free time. I always did open source contributions in my free time until a few months back. Now also I do a lot of contributions like other than what I do at work. So it is difficult, but I see that as like, how do I incentivize myself? So my incentive was that knowledge. Like Nikita mentioned that contributing to Kubernetes, she gained a lot of friends from around the world. It's the same case with me, like same case with everyone. Probably I know a lot of people here who are in this call just because of the community, be it Kubernetes, be it other communities like just mentioning some other like DGPLUG or the Python India community. So that drove me towards like even putting some of my free time into those kinds of things. Although like I am a bit shameful, like I am a bit ashamed with what happened. Like this should not have happened, and hijacking is not the right thing to do. I don't know who did it or like what was the scenario, but usually if it happens, like we should like take it up.
Yeah, and another feedback would be like, so I have been like lately I'm trying to get into the Kubernetes cluster autoscaler. Yeah, there are like after this thing, I used that help wanted tag and found some PRs, like some issues which wants help. So that gives me a very clear understanding that these are the like issues I can start working on. However, the numbers are quite less. So if there could be like if that could be increased, like somebody tries the like issues that like creates a long backlog. Say at least like a project should have at least like if they have like 50 odd issues, they should at least have 10 or say 20 issues with demarcated as wanted or something like that. So if that number goes up, then we can have a larger surface area for people to come and like start tracking problems and solving them.
Yeah, that's true. Also, like I would say help wanted, as I mentioned earlier, that help wanted is just an added annotation. Usually like there are some not help wanted labeled issues as well, which you can take up. based on your familiarity with the project and the language, whichever language it may be Go, it may be Python, or like anything that we use in the Kubernetes community. So also, like, one more thing, like whenever you feel, or if you feel that a project has like less number of issues, although like having less number of issues means less number of pain points with the project, and that means that can mean either the project is really good or people don't use it. But if you feel that there are like less evidence to contribute to, I'd say, like, for example, for autoscaler, you can maybe attend to the SIG autoscaling meetings and say that, hey, I am interested to work on autoscaler, but I am new. I'm really interested in the autoscaler. I have used it. How can I help you out? Are there any active enhancements or caps that you are working on that I can lend my hands to? Usually, like, no person rejects help in the Kubernetes community. It's a vast community with a vast number of things to be done.
Yeah, in that it was really helpful. So I went to one of the SIGs last month, and I said I wanted to work on an issue, and then somebody like who is a maintainer in the project gave me an issue. So yeah, but then today I started looking through the help wanted. I found some issues that I can take, I can start working on. I did not know this hack earlier that I can filter by labels, and like, so this session was really good. I already picked up an issue and started looking at it. Let's see how that goes.
So
thanks for that.
Yeah, I think like another thing is, like, if you feel like this is like very overwhelming, the Kubernetes/Kubernetes repo, it's a really good idea to look at all the ecosystem projects that are there, and the ecosystem projects are like really niche. So if you're a domain expert in certain thing, you can contribute there. So, and like Nabarun mentioned, join the SIG meetings of that particular project and just speak out, like, I want to help, tell me how. So
yeah.
In addition, I would definitely recommend you also join the Slack channel if that was already not mentioned, because like it's not possible that, given the time zones and everything else, that a person that there will necessarily be Zoom meetings on a given day. There we often opt in for an async mode of communication. So a very good way to also sort of keep up with the times is to join the Slack and have conversations just on this respective channel for that particular SIG or working group that you are looking to join or looking for the issue to work on.
And there is this constant complaint about time zones, right? I think we have a time zone issue because we don't have many Indians working on it. So like this is an initiative where we get more Indians to work on the project so that we can, I mean, wherever the bulk of people are, that's how that's the main time zone where meetings happen. So yeah, if we contribute our bulk, I guess we can steer something with that.
I would like to add something here. So in the last release, Nabarun actually took some initiative and started off like a APAC or like towards the eastern side of the world time focused meeting. So like in every community, it's basically you have to take kind of a lead and start up with things. So thanks to Nabarun, he started off with one in the last release cycle.
I'd say like it's not just me to thank. It's like everyone out there who helped me in making that idea successful, in the sense that you also need like acts from other people. So like we are also starting to do more on that front. Suraj raised a really nice point of like building the mass. So this is a session which also aims towards that. Like we need more contributors from India. We need more ideas. And when you have like geographical diversity, you get like any sort of diversity, you get more ideas, you get more different ideas. And then at the end of the day, what happens? The product becomes better. Kubernetes is a product, right? So yeah, that's that.
So just a couple of points. So yeah, also in the interest of time, I will keep it short. I don't want to consume everyone's time. Um, so yeah, the point of time being a factor is really relevant. So I have been using the first Kubernetes version I used was 1.6 or 1.7, but yeah, since then and yeah, basically I'm OpenShift guy. So yeah, I'm aware of Kubernetes and stuff, but yeah, contributing is a factor. And what I also see is that a lot of majority of the people who would want to be part of the community are also interested in how they can leverage this technology better and have the best practices around it. And I think that is also something which is say missed. So yeah, so with that I was also in I wanted to get in touch with you all, where how can we leverage the experience which people have and share that with the community as well. Maybe look, so yeah, meetups is one. So yeah, along those lines also I just wanted to get in touch.
I'd also mention there's this thing called office hours in the Kubernetes community. So there's this Slack channel called office hours, and it's like basically, and it's also like streamed on YouTube. It's a Zoom meeting. So you can join, I think it's held once a month. So you can join that office hours to ask questions if you have any problems running Kubernetes, using Kubernetes. So that's one side of the story. The other side is we need panelists to answer these questions. And most of the folks have been in like Europe or the US, and we've been looking for people to help out in India. But I mean, it could be just like lack of reaching out to people, but we couldn't get a critical mass for that. So if you are interested in something like that, that could also be a place to just help out.
Thanks. Sure.
Okay, so I mean, this is a really good discussion, but yeah, we also need to think about time because it's already